It's been a pleasure being a friend and being a coworker and doing all of these, doing life together. So, I didn't get to do a State of the Onion last year because of the hurricane, stupid hurricane. So I feel like I'm out of practice. I don't know if I remember how to do this, but we'll see if we can figure it out. We'll do it together, okay? So the first thing I got to do, I got to say thanks to our sponsors, Applied Network Defense, No Starch Press, Dualcomm, Midbit Technologies. Thank you so much for the donations that we were able to use for the giveaways. That's tremendous. Got to say some other words of thanks. Thank you to our speakers. If you learned something new today, give them a round of applause. Our volunteers, if you had a good experience coming in this morning at the registration table, if you had a good experience getting your food throughout the day, give the volunteers a round of applause. And you all, attendees, thank you. If it weren't for you, none of this would mean anything, so thank you. And of course, Mike Bird. Is he in here? Where's Mike? There he is. Mike, stand up. Take a bow for that amazing banana pudding. There he is. All right. Now we got to thank all of these folks, all of my SOS team members. Our family has grown. I want to make sure that I mention our two new team members, Shane and Scott. Shane and Scott, stand up so everybody can see you. I want to embarrass you too. Welcome, guys. I also want to make sure that I recognize, first I want to recognize where my cursor is. I've gotten to the point now where you get at a point in your life where you're pushing things farther and farther out to see them. That means I have to zoom in more and more on the screen. All right, so employee anniversaries this week. Mr. Josh Patterson and Bryant Truckle, you guys stand up. We've got to embarrass Josh P. Where's Bryant? See, there he is. Hey. So both Josh Patterson and Bryant Truckle joined us in 2019, which means it's been 6 years now. So congratulations, guys. Thanks for all you do. We appreciate it. Of course, thanks to the GCITC for this amazing facility, and Mr. Eric Toller, who spoke this morning. We appreciate it. And last but not least, of course, thanks to AWS for the laws this week. Yeah, too soon. Yeah, my bad. All right, so as we go throughout the rest of this talk, please feel free to share on social media. You can find us on most social media channels at Security Onion. I'm at Doug Burks. And if hashtags are still a thing, Sock Augusta. Why not? All right, so I'd like to speak to you today on this subject. You can just do things. I mentioned that this morning, and this is one of my favorite phrases right now. You can just do things. So, what does it actually mean? You can just do things. It means you have agency. You have free will. You are empowered. Don't give in to imposter syndrome or learned helplessness. I think a lot of us really kind of started out in our careers, especially when you come into the cybersecurity industry. It's a big industry with a lot of very smart folks. It's a little intimidating. We all suffer from imposter syndrome, and a lot of times that really holds us back in our careers, in the things that we do. So don't give in to that. You can just do things. There's even a book. You can go to Amazon, you can get this book, You Can Just Do Things. Okay, I didn't actually read the book, but I did read the Amazon reviews, and I give those reviews 10 out of 10, would read again. Now, I have to give a caveat here. You can just do things within reason, because this morning, when I used that phrase, you can just do things, my good friend Josh Brower, he gets on our internal Slack channel, and he posts, you can just do things, You don't need to wait for permission or approval. And he's quoting that, and I know that he's doing that with the ulterior motive that he's going to push the boundaries of that statement. So I said, why do I have a feeling that statement is going to be used against me? So the caveat here is you can just do things within reason, Josh Brower. So don't do things that will get you in trouble with your boss. Don't do things that will get you in trouble with the government within reason. Use your best judgment, Josh. All right, so I talked about Miss Joanne Sexton this morning and the profound impact that she had on me and on countless others. She accomplished so many amazing things in her career, always taking initiative, always getting things done. She really lived out, you can just do things. So she's one great example. I want to talk about another great example, and that's Mr. Chris Sanders. Can I ask you to come join me on the stage, Mr. Chris Sanders? So earlier Chris was talking, and I think he did mention the Rural Technology Fund, and this is an amazing thing that he started many years ago, and it's to help get technology into the hands of those in rural communities. This is something that's very near and dear to me because I grew up on a tiny little dirt road. My address was literally Rural Route 2, Box 52A, and it was technology that got me out of that little dirt road. And so this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. This is something that we want to continue to support. And so because of that, we thank you, Chris, for all that you have done, and we'd like to present this check to you for $15,000. All right, so now I have to ask you, Chris, a question. When you started Rural Technology Fund, did you have to ask for permission to do it?
Absolutely not.
You can just do things. He just did things, right? Great example. All right, so you can just do things. This is not a new idea, right? It's been said many times over the years in many different ways. A great example is back in 2011, this great guy, Seth Godin, he's got a blog. I love his blog. And one of my favorite blog posts of his says, "Initiative isn't given, you take it," right? Same idea, different words. So that's a great blog post. Then there was this crazy guy, he did his weird kind of screaming YouTube thing, just do it. Of course, there was also this shoe company that said, just do it. Same idea, different words. But of course, what cybersecurity talk would be complete without the obligatory Sun Tzu reference? You can just do things. Probably he said that, right? Okay, maybe not. But he did say this: opportunities multiply as they are seized. A little more eloquent way of putting it, right? He did actually say that. So you can just do things has really kind of turned into this funny kind of a meme. So let's have some fun. So this is not my boat, I swear. I promise. I saw this on social media the other day. Now, growing up, we did have a raggedy old boat that kind of looked like that. And we did have a raggedy old camper shell that kind of looked like that. But we never had the genius nor the courage to put the two together. But that's pretty awesome because you can just do things, right? So we had this camper shell that kind of looked like that, and it was on this raggedy old truck, and that's the actual truck. That's my 1967 Ford F-100 that we paid $375 for. Yeah, buddy. So the body of the truck was rusted out, it was primered, it was bondoed, and the bed of the truck had these wooden slats that were rotted out. So we ripped the entire bed off, we built our own wooden bed on the back, I spray painted the cab with rattle cans, and yes, I am an artiste, as you can see. Yeah. So let's go back further. How about like 1990? You can just build an arcade. You know, that's me, and I had this idea, hey Dad, let's build an arcade. And so we got a whole bunch of plywood, and we started cutting on it, and we built this kind of quote-unquote arcade. And you've got my little Nintendo sitting in there, and I was so excited that we built this thing that we don't even need to paint it. Let's just put it in there, and let's just start playing on the arcade, right? So I don't know what's more embarrassing, the unpainted plywood cabinet or my haircut. Years later, I did redeem myself by building the Onion Arcade, which some of you have seen. Presented that at our 2016 conference. Now, you may be tempted to think that inside of the Onion Arcade is a Raspberry Pi, but no, that's too easy. I like challenges, right? So I decided to go hardcore with a real, honest-to-goodness Nintendo. But how do you connect real arcade buttons to a Nintendo? Well, as it turns out, you can just tear apart Nintendo controllers. Just solder right into them, you know. So you can just do things. But let's go back further. I think this was 1989. Me and my buddies, Jason and Kenny. And I want you to notice a few things. So first of all, the Jolly Green Giant telephone. What? The 80s were weird, man. Just weird, and kind of awesome, but mostly weird. Underneath the Jolly Green Giant telephone is, of course, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, if you look to the left, can anybody tell me what's to the left of the Nintendo? Here's some rumblings. So that, my friends, is a Commodore 128. I loved my Commodore 128. It was a great machine. Kelly Mazzata was talking this morning about BASIC. So I learned to program BASIC on my Commodore. Had a great time. Now, before I had the Commodore 128, I had a Commodore 16 that I got in 1984. I don't have any pictures of that. But that was my first computer. I hooked it up to the TV, and I immediately typed, print, Doug is cool, right? Because that's what you do. That's the obligatory first program. Now, the second real program that I wrote mapped one of the function keys to do that. So I could press F1 and it would type out Doug is cool. And I thought I really was cool. So I was doing command lines and hotkeys. I've been doing that for, carry the one, over 40 years now. Like I'm old, right? That's embarrassing. So in the meantime, I don't know what's more embarrassing, the Jolly Green Giant phone or my haircut. And I don't know what's more embarrassing, using the same bad hair joke twice or using the same bad hair joke twice. Maybe I was trying to channel my inner Steve Wozniak. So you got Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. You know, these guys said, you can just do things. So they just built a computer, and they just started a company, and they just kick-started an industry, and they just changed all of our lives because you can just do things. So they grew this company, and then they needed some adult supervision, so they brought in the guy in the middle. Anybody know who that is? I heard it. John Sculley. Very good. Bonus points for Kelly. All right, so where did John Sculley come from? Pepsi, very good. So there's this great story, I'm sure Kelly's heard it, where Steve Jobs said, I need a professional CEO. He saw this Pepsi commercial on TV and he said, I want that guy. So he goes and visits John Sculley and he tries to convince him to come join this little tiny computer company. John Sculley's like, I run Pepsi. Why would I care about some little tiny computer company? Steve Jobs looks him in the eye, and he says, do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world? Mic drop. John Sculley had no choice but to say yes. So he went from selling sugar water to selling computers, because you can just do things. Fast forward, now who runs Apple? This guy right here, Tim Cook. No engineering experience whatsoever, but he's running an amazing company and has no engineering experience. Speaking of Apple engineering, you can just switch to a new operating system. All right, so let's talk about my history with operating systems. So I started off with a computer, Commodore computer, as I said. Later I got a PC, so I learned MS-DOS. I moved on to Windows, went through 3.1, 95, 98, NT, 2007, 10, 11, you know, the whole deal. Now in 1997, I was reading this magazine, and it was talking about this weird thing called Linux. And it was like, you know, you could go and buy Microsoft Windows, and you could buy Microsoft SQL Server, and you could spend thousands and thousands of dollars. Or you could just download Linux for free, and you could have a server-grade operating system and database and just run all day long. And it's great, and it blew my mind. So I immediately drove down to Best Buy, and I paid $50 for a boxed set of Red Hat 5.0 because I was on dial-up, and there was no way I was downloading an ISO image on dial-up, right? So that was 1997, and it literally changed my career. Fast forward to 2008, I joined a company here in town, which was primarily a media publishing company, so there were lots of Apple Mac products throughout the enterprise. And so I got my very first MacBook. I started using Mac OS for the first time, based on FreeBSD, very similar to Linux, so I felt pretty comfortable, no problem. Fast forward to 2012, I went and joined a little cybersecurity company you may have heard of called Mandiant. I was the Deputy Chief Security Officer there. And at Mandiant, we were handling some of the most severe nation-state adversaries in the world, handling some crazy cases, calling out nation-state adversaries, like with the APT1 report. And I figured, you know, I better up my game just a little bit, because as the Deputy CISO, like if I get popped, I'm in trouble. I'm going to lose my job, and I'm going to be embarrassed, so let's not do that. So I ran my MacBook with Mac OS as my hypervisor, and I used Linux in a virtual machine as my daily driver, thinking that, you know, email and web browsing, do that in a disposable VM, that's an extra layer of protection. All right, fast forward to 2014. I left Mandiant, started Security Onion Solutions, and I bought myself a brand new MacBook. And it was great, until it wasn't. So that's the laptop that I bought in 2014, and it's still alive today. However, it's been abandoned by Apple, so you can't run the current version of Mac OS on it. There are hacky ways to do that, but it's not great. So, you know what? Don't throw the machine away. Just install Linux, right? So this MacBook from 2014, that's now 11 years old, is now running Linux. It's my daughter's laptop. She loves it. It works great. All right, another example. So after that first MacBook that I bought in 2014, 3 years later in 2017, Apple at the time was still limiting their laptops to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that just wasn't enough for my purposes. So I couldn't buy another MacBook, so I bought a Dell laptop. And of course it was running Windows. 8 years later, this is that same laptop, and oh, by the way, this is that same laptop. I'm still running it today. However, Microsoft says it's not compatible with Windows 11. So don't throw it away, just install Linux. All right, this machine is running Linux, and it works great. You can just switch to a new hypervisor. So this laptop originally ran Windows and VMware Workstation. It was okay, but you know, there's that whole Broadcom acquisition, and they made it incredibly difficult to continue using VMware Workstation, VMware Fusion. They say that it's free, but good luck actually getting into their portal and actually downloading it and actually getting support for it. So just switch to Proxmox. It's Debian Linux, it's the KVM hypervisor, it works great. All right, you can just find or create your ideal desktop environment. Does anybody know who this guy is? Ooh, I think I may have stumped the crowd. I know somebody here knows. Josh Brower probably knows. So this guy is DHH. He's the guy who created Ruby on Rails and several other things. So he was a loyal Apple MacBook fan, Apple fan period, for like 20 years. And all of a sudden, Apple kind of annoyed him. So he said, enough is enough. I'm leaving the Apple ecosystem. And so he started experimenting with Linux on the desktop. He had been using Linux on the server for many years, but he had never really tried Linux on the desktop. He had some preconceived notions about, well, it's not great. It's a suboptimal experience. It can't compare to Mac OS. So that's why he never really tried it before. But Apple forced his hand, so he tried it. And he said, you know what? This is not half bad. I can work with this. And so he started with Ubuntu, and he kind of crafted it for his own workflow. He took some things out, he added some things in, and he made it his own thing. He called it Omakube, which stands for Omikaze Ubuntu. Omikaze is a Japanese word which essentially means chef's choice. So this is my choice of ingredients for this fine meal. So he released that. You can go check it out at omakube.org. And he ran that as his daily driver for about a year, until just a few months ago, when he really went deep down the rabbit hole, which is Arch Linux. Anybody an Arch Linux fan in here? Hey, we got some of those. Y'all are awesome. So this guy created Omarchy, and that's his Omikaze version of Arch Linux. So again, he took some things out, he added some things in. He made this really beautiful desktop environment with all kinds of themes, with all kinds of hotkeys for any kind of thing that you can think of. And you can find that at omarchy.org. So about every year or so, I kind of look at my technology stack, and I kind of talked about this a few slides back, you know, flipping between Apple, Mac OS, and Windows, and Linux. So every year I'm kind of looking at my technology stack saying, is this the right stack for me? Is this the most efficient set of tools for my workflow? And so I was kind of already in the process of doing this when DHH announced Omarchy. So I looked at Omarchy and I was like, this is really pretty cool. I kind of like this, and it's almost ideal for my purposes, almost. But I started to wonder if I could do something kind of like this, but on Debian Linux with the Cinnamon desktop. And as it turns out, you can just port your favorite features to another distro. So this is plain Jane vanilla Debian 13 Cinnamon desktop. It's kind of meh, or mid, as the kids are saying these days. But if you port a lot of that Omarchy goodness to it, then you wind up with something that's a little bit more colorful. It has a little bit more automation. It has the hotkeys. It has a lot of the coolness of Omarchy. So, oh, by the way, this is called OhMyDebian, and it is running on this laptop right now. So you can find it at ohmydebian.org. You can go and download it, play with it. It runs on Debian 13 and derivatives of Debian 13 like Proxmox 9. So as a matter of fact, this laptop is running Proxmox with a desktop environment, which is OhMyDebian. Where's the name come from? Command lines and hotkeys and beauty, oh my. It's so debonair, it will make your friends say, oh, my Debian installations never looked this good. All right, so one of the great things about running on Debian is it is compatible with not just x86 hardware, but also ARM hardware. So on the left, you see a little Raspberry Pi. It's running OhMyDebian. The middle is my daughter's laptop. That was my 2014 Apple MacBook running OhMyDebian. And on the right is this laptop right here running OhMyDebian. So this morning I got up at 3 a.m. and I released OhMyDebian 2.0 just for you all. So you can go to ohmydebian.org. You can download version 2.0. Would you like to see a quick demo? Why not? So let's see if I can make it work with our projectors here. So let's see. Super D should show the desktop. Okay, that's cool. We got some nice wallpaper that's kind of reminiscent of the whole video game era, right? Bright colors, you know, it's got that sort of 80s vivid pastels and stuff like that. So a lot of this is really kind of, it's a fun project that's supposed to bring back some of that nostalgia, because nostalgia is a heck of a drug, right? All right, so we can do Super D to show the desktop. We can do Control-Shift-O to bring up our beautiful logo. We can do Control-Shift-S to bring up Screen Fetch, and that's going to animate into the screen and show you some system details. You can do Super T to run BTOP. Oh, well, that's a bummer. Here I am really getting into the action. You guys can't see anything. Hey, I knew the projector would be an issue. That's a very small resolution. Well, let's do this so that you actually get to see the animation. Let's see, Control-Shift-O. Oh, Control-Shift-S. Oh, yes. And let's see, Super T, BTOP. And let's see, Super N. That's going to bring up NeoVim. Any NeoVim users in here? Hey, we got a couple. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so we've got these things, and because of the resolution of this projector screen, we're not going to be able to show a whole bunch of windows at the same time, but let me show you some of the beautiful theme work that DHH did that we get to take advantage of in Oh My Debian. So if I do Control Super T, that brings up a menu, which is kind of hard to see on the projector, but that's okay. I will kind of talk you through it. We're on our default theme here, but let's change to another theme. And when I do this, you're going to notice that not just the wallpaper changes, but NeoVim changes, BTOP changes. So everything is themed. All the applications are themed. And so you've got this nice wallpaper. So if I do Super D again, you get that. That's kind of cool. Now let's take it one step further and bring up our handy dandy menu, go to Build New Theme. We've got this new piece of software that's written by this really cool dude, and you can build your own themes. So let's go to Local. Yep, we can see that. And I've got some cool AI-generated wallpapers here. So notice this fractal, this was actually on the Onion Arcade from 2016. Some good Onion Arcade nostalgia for you. But let's do this one, I like this guy. So what's cool about this program is that you take an image and it will actually find and identify the most common colors. So you can extract those colors and then apply those colors to your entire desktop, all the applications. So that's kind of cool. So that includes BTOP and NDOM and stuff like that. So is that cool? Does that bring back like some 80s vibes? Like, oh, wait, one more thing. Control-Alt-D. Forgot to do that one. So that's like demo scene nostalgia, right? So we got some 80s vibes, some 90s vibes. We got it going on. So now you're asking me, Doug, what in the world does this have to do with Security Onion? Absolutely nothing. Okay, maybe something. So I mentioned before that we are running Proxmox here with the Oh My Debian desktop. Let me see if I can find my Windows. Okay, so that's Proxmox. You should be seeing that. So Proxmox is a hypervisor, so I can run virtual machines. What can I run in a virtual machine? Well, Security Onion, of course. So I've got Security Onion running in a virtual machine on top of Proxmox with the Oh My Debian desktop environment. Now where do I go from here? Well, let's go to this tab. So I've got Security Onion up and running. I've got my Security Onion console. So you can see I've got some alerts here. And you saw a great demo from Josh Brower this morning, walking through the alerts interface, looking at our AI summaries, looking at our guided analysis, courtesy of Playbooks. We also have, of course, the amazing dashboards, and I've made it angry. Yep, that's why. Just timed out. It's okay. All right, so we've got alerts, we've got dashboards, we've got Hunt. Everything works, all on this one laptop, all self-contained. Security Onion is installed in an air-gap environment, so it doesn't rely on any kind of network connectivity. Now, we talked about alerts, we talked about dashboards, we talked about Hunt. Does this menu look familiar, or is there anything that's different? What? What you say? What? Onion AI? Are my eyes deceiving me? What is that? What? Jason, did you sneak something in? What's going on here? Should I click it? You can just do things. It's true, you can just do things. That's a good point. But I'm not going to do that thing just yet. I'm going to tease you a little bit longer. All right, so let me see if I can get back to the slides. So, hey. So, you can just have fun with Oh My Devon. Oh My Devon is just a fun project. It is not officially related to Security Onion and is not required. I want to be very clear about that. Okay? The first part of this presentation, this was all just fun. This was all just examples of you can just do things. Now let's switch gears to what you came here for. Let's talk about our AI journey. Y'all ready to lock in? Are y'all ready to lock in? Yeah. Let's go. All right. So, let's talk about the way that we think about AI. The first thing that you have to understand is that we as a company, and we as a community, we as a platform, everything that we do is by defenders, for defenders. Right? We don't just do things for marketing. We don't just do things for silly stunt hacking. We do things that are actually reasonable and produce actionable results. Can't just be a marketing gimmick. So we're not just going to bolt on AI just for the sake of checking a box, just because all of our other competitors are doing. It's got to actually mean something. So our AI journey, we started with AI summaries. Josh Bauer talked about this morning. So, one of the things that we found over the years, especially with junior analysts, when they start working in our industry, one of the big problems that they have is, how do I take an alert, look at the rule that generated the alert, and actually understand what that rule is actually looking for and why it matters to me? Right? Because if you haven't spent some time understanding the Suricata rules language or some of the other rules languages that are out there that are generating alerts, then you don't really understand why that alert matters or what I need to do to respond to it. So we built AI summaries, and that takes something that's machine readable and turns it into something that's much more human readable, right? So we've had a lot of great success with AI summaries, and folks really like that a lot. That was added to detections in 24110 and added to alerts in 24120. Now we go to the next stage, which was AI playbooks. Again, we talked about that this morning. You can just do faster response with AI playbooks. So those summaries help us to understand why an alert fired, but then we need to understand where we go from there. And that's where AI playbooks, also known as guided analysis, comes into play. Chris and Josh did a great job of explaining all this stuff earlier, so I'm not going to rehash all that here. I'll simply point out that this was added in 24160, and we'll move on. So, we got AI summaries, we've got AI playbooks. The next thing we built was an MCP server. So we took it to the next level. We announced that along with 24160, and there you see a quick demo video of the MCP server, which allows you to do the kind of natural language queries. You can talk to your Security Onion box, and have it do some pretty amazing things. However, the MCP server requires additional configuration and resources, right? So not everybody has those resources at hand, and the additional configuration might be complex for some folks. So how can we make that better? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. You can just do all of this stuff today, but what can you do in the future? In the future, you can just use Onion AI to get the benefits of MCP without leaving Security Onion Console. So that Onion AI thing that we just saw, you click on that, it's going to say, hello, I'm your AI assistant for Security Onion. How can I help you today? You just start typing away. You tell it what you want it to do, and it does it for you. So let's talk about Onion AI. We spent several months building this new interface. It's not available yet, but it is coming soon for pro customers. And we've invested lots and lots of time and effort into tuning the prompt to give you actionable results. Now, once you have it in your hands, you can fine-tune it for your environment via an addendum prompt. The first version that we release will require internet access. However, we are working on local model support. We know we have lots of friends that cannot connect to the internet for this kind of stuff, so we want to make sure that we support that. And we know that lots of organizations may have organizational policies against this kind of AI usage, and so it is disabled by default, but you can easily go and turn it on if you're allowed to do so. Now, this is where we get into a big caveat. We have to put some big disclaimers and warnings in the air because no AI is perfect, regardless of what the other vendors say, right? I'm going to be real with you because I'm a defender just like you are. No AI is perfect, and we do not claim that ours is perfect either. So the Onion AI conversations that you have will include a disclaimer that will remind you of that. All right. So you can just use Onion AI to show the top 5 alerts. I don't know how well you can see that. Let me see if I can do this. Kinda. All right, so essentially, I type in show top 5 alerts, and Onion AI says, I'll query for the top 5 most frequent alerts. And can I go down? So it does the query, it comes back and it says, here are the top 5 alerts from your environment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we see there at the top, ET info observed Cloudflare DNS over HTTPS domain, yada, yada, yada. It gives us an analysis summary. That's the most frequent alert. It gives us some key observations down below. And all of this happens very, very quickly, right? Much faster than most human analysts. All right, Onion AI builds on playbooks. That should be a little bit easier to see. So if we start with show me the top 5 alerts, it gives us that list of top 5, and then maybe we find one that's interesting and we say, hey, show me more information about this one. So it's going to go and retrieve the details of that alert. Then it's going to say, I need to go get the playbook that's associated with that alert. And so you can see that up there. Now let me retrieve the playbook questions to guide a thorough investigation of this alert. Perfect, I have all the information needed. Let me provide a comprehensive investigation analysis. So all that work that we've been doing for all that time for AI summaries, AI playbooks, it all builds on each other. And it now culminates in Onion AI. And so now that's going to be the guardrails to help keep AI from going off the rails. Right? Are we tracking? All right, so this is the remainder part of that transcript. Let me zoom in a little bit. So we're looking at an alert. This alert detected a PDF file with an embedded file being downloaded by an internal host from an external source. And then you see at number 2 there, playbook investigation results. That's going through each of those playbook questions that we talked about earlier. it's getting the results of the queries, and it's doing additional analysis as well. So what was the complete HTTP response containing the PDF with the embedded file? And all the information is there. That's question 1, there's question 2, question 3, so on and so forth. So in addition to going directly to Onion AI is integrated into Security Onion Console as a whole, which means that you can go to Alerts, find an alert there, and then click the Onion AI icon on the left of the alert, and that will pivot you directly into Onion AI to investigate that particular alert. You can just rock out to Nickelback if that's your thing. Not my thing, but might be yours, and that's okay, I'm not judging you. So look at this graph. Horrible imitations aside, we will zoom into that. So when Onion AI pulls all that information back, gives you a nice report, including a beautiful investigation timeline, so you start to see how all of the telemetry that we collect fits together. You can start to see the phases of the attack line up on that timeline. Really pretty amazing stuff. You can just recite DNS Haiku. We were reciting DNS Haiku on Monday with that whole AWS thing, weren't we? It's not DNS. There's no way it's DNS. Yeah, it was DNS. All right, so here's an example of a DNS alert. So let's zoom in here, go up a little bit. All right, so this was an alert for Cloudflare DNS over HTTPS. So this is encrypted DNS traffic. And so Onion AI analyzes the alert, understands why it fired, understands the significance of my environment. It gives me some recommended actions. Number 1, verify policy compliance. So if this is your organization, whether it's a business or the military, the government, whatever the case may be, maybe you have some kind of policy against that kind of DNS usage. Maybe you're required to use particular DNS servers. Maybe this is a policy violation. So it walks you through all the steps of how do you respond to this. Maybe it's not an incident response process. Maybe it's just you need to go and tune that particular alert, right? You can just find IoT garbage. Y'all never seen IoT garbage, have you? Doesn't exist. All right, so this alert was on my home network, and it was for a .biz DNS lookup. And so .biz can be perfectly legitimate, but it is oftentimes used for some malicious type stuff. So now it's our job as defenders to kind of figure out what was the case here. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it indifferent? Well, I had Onion AI run this investigation to ground, and it really came back with some cool information because it figured out that the connection to this .biz DNS address was actually going to Framio.biz, and Framio is a company that produces those little digital photo frames, right, that they sell on Amazon for like $11 or something. And they all have TCP/IP stacks, and they're all horribly vulnerable, and you're allowing all kinds of issues into your networks when you connect those things. And as it turns out, my daughters had purchased one of these for my wife for Mother's Day, and so that lives on our IoT VLAN, and that created the beautiful report that you see there. So yay, IoT garbage. You can just discover wannabe pen testers. Let's see what we got here. So this was actually me doing some testing, some legitimate testing, and I was using testmynids.org. Anybody use that service? Comes in very handy. I know Jeff does. Yep, it's great. And so the alert that fired had nothing at all to do with testmynids.org, but here's the brilliance of Onion AI. Because it did the correlation automatically, it correlated the alert to the metadata. It figured out all the DNS lookups, it figured out the HTTP logs, it correlated all this stuff together, and it said, oh, well, that alert, which looked kind of scary, it was actually just going to testmynids.org. So this is legitimate security testing. It's not actual malware. You don't need to engage the incident response process. just a test. As long as the user was authorized to go to testmynids.org, then you're good. Cool stuff. You can just determine if EXEs are legit or sus. All right, let's see what we got here. So the alert was for ET-info packed executable download. And this is something that I love about Onion AI is that, let me zoom in a little bit more. So we give you the AI assessment, and in this case it assessed that it's benign. And we give you a confidence level. In this case it was 95%, that's pretty good. It's not 100%, but it's close. And so that kind of helps you with that kind of caveat that I talked about earlier, that no AI is perfect. Regardless of what all the other vendors say, I'm not going to stand up here and say that AI is perfect. So we make sure to give you that assessment, a confidence level, and then we give you additional information as well. And so in this case, that executable download came from 2.au.download.windowsupdate.com. This is actually a funny story here. So as we were tuning this whole system, AI kept making this, this kind of leap to conclusions to that AU in that domain was in Australia, right? And so it kept saying that this user was downloading stuff from Australia. So we eventually had to teach AI that it's not actually Australia in this case, although in many cases it is, if it's .au suffix, but in this case AU stands for automatic updates, and that's part of the legitimate Windows Update service. So now it knows better than to make that newbie mistake. All right, this is continuation of the same thing. So here we see process analysis. This is where things get really cool because not only do we have the network side of the equation, but we have the endpoint logs as well. And Onion AI can stitch all of that together seamlessly and figure out exactly what process was running on that endpoint that initiated this whole network conversation. And in addition to the network stuff and the host-based stuff, we have file analysis as well. So if the file is transferred in clear text, we can extract the file, we can do analysis on that file, and Onion AI can give us the result of that analysis. In this case, it is a Windows EXE. We've got a file name, we've got a related DLL, which is mpengine.dll, and Onion AI says, you know what, that is Windows Defender. That's totally normal anti-malware definition update package. Cool stuff. All right, here's another example of the detailed assessment where we're giving you as much information as we can about how AI came to the conclusion that it did so that you as a human can double check how it came to that conclusion. So we've got the evidence supporting that benign assessment, and it's a legitimate source, it's an expected process, it's appropriate user context, yada, 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 everything looks good. You got some recommended actions down there for your next steps. And at the very end here, still a little small, investigation status, closed, false positive. It's a legitimate Windows Defender update via Windows Update Service. So again, Onion AI can take all this information, it can synthesize it, it can condense it and boil it down into a report in just a few seconds. And that makes you go much further, much faster than you could otherwise. You can just create stunning reports. So this was actually some alerts for stun traffic. That's session traversals for NAT. And that's a way of, a lot of kind of chat services use that and things like that. In this case, we investigated the alert and we get a nice timeline again of that stun traffic. And we get a nice summary where we have stun servers contacted, total stun packets, yada, yada, yada. You can just triage those noisy rules quickly. So this is a great thing that we found over the last few weeks and months of building this system is that this is not just good for triaging alerts, it's also for tuning your system as well, so that in the future, you're actually lowering the number of alerts that you get. All right, so here's an example. In this case, the alert was for a .to TO domain. And in this case, it came back with a medium confidence level. It was unable to confirm the specific content or legitimacy of hello.pledge.to. In this case, I think this was my daughter that was going out and pledging a donation to a charity or something like that. But this was some really good information, and Onion AI gave it to me very quickly, and that gave me the intelligence to say, you know what, I could probably tune my rule set because that alert is not really that big of a deal for my daughter and what she was doing. Let's see, what is this one? Primary assessment, this appears to be legitimate advertising tracking traffic triggered by web browsing activity. This was admaster.cc. It's associated with advertising infrastructure. And again, this is another case of an alert fires, and the alert itself doesn't have a whole lot of context with it. But Onion AI can take that alert, and it can look up the specific domain name based on correlation, and then it can do internet searches to say, tell me more about that domain name. Is it legit? Is it used for malicious purposes? What's the deal? In this case, it was just advertising, so it's probably okay. You can just snoop on our friends at Microsoft. Well, how do we do that? Let's see. Why this alert triggered? So this was another ET-info packed executable download. And this is pretty cool because, again, a Windows update, and Onion AI is saying, this is legitimate Microsoft domain and IP. It verified all that. Looks good. Standard Windows update process chain. That looks fine. Expected user context. Known Windows Defender update files. No lateral movement detected. No suspicious subsequent activity. So not only is Onion AI looking at the alerts, doing the correlation, doing all of the synthesis of that data, it's also going the next step that you would want your good analyst to be doing, of saying, hey, is there any other lateral movement in the environment? Are there any other signs of beaconing or C2 behavior? Onion AI is doing that and finding nothing in this case. You can just learn more about how operating systems work. This is pretty awesome. No immediate action required. This is expected Windows behavior. Which one was this? So this was Luke on Windows 11. Consider tuning, documentation. Oh yeah, so this was, there was an Active Directory LDAP lookup. There were WPAD queries, Microsoft Connect test DNS. So I think this alert was like when Windows wakes up and it tries to connect to Microsoft.com just for a connectivity test. That's the alert that fired. And so Onion AI is saying, you know what? That's totally expected Windows behavior. No need to engage the incident response process. You can just figure out what that Doug guy is up to, if that's even his real name. All right, let's see. So this is another example of testmynids.org. So I used curl. We talked about curl earlier. I used curl to go out to testmynids.org. And again, because I have not just network traffic, but I have endpoint logs as well, I can correlate between the two, and I can figure out what was the process that generated the traffic, and go a step further, what was the user that ran the process that generated the traffic. In this case, it was Doug. And he was running the Chromium browser. There were some JavaScript files created. There were no suspicious executables created post-download, single connection, no lateral movement. Pretty cool. Earlier, Chris mentioned a Luma Stealer issue, and so you can just handle an actual Luma Stealer infection. So I went out to Brad Duncan's website. Anybody use malwaretrafficanalysis.net? It's a great site, yep. So he takes modern malware, and he infects a Windows machine, and he records all the network traffic, and he makes those PCAPs available on the internet for free. So it's a great way to test your systems and test your knowledge. And in this case, this was a Luma Stealer PCAP. that I imported into Security Onion. I told Onion AI to investigate it. And so this was not something that was cherry-picked. This was not something that, I specifically did intentionally to generate some alerts. This was actual, real Luma stealer that happens today that's actually used by bad guys to compromise good guys. Onion AI said, here's the alerts. A lot of these are correlated together. A lot of these alerts were generated based on the same exact piece of traffic. And the more alerts that you have for a single TCP stream, the more of an issue you may have. And so you start to see that there. We have severities, we have key indicators, MZ header from IP address, exe download from an IP address, and so on and so forth. This was the continuation of that. Analysis of the additional alert. We have a spam house drop list alert. So what happens here in this Luma stealer infection is that you have that initial exe download, and then you have like a callback, and you have some C2, you have some beaconing going on, and at some point, one of those hits an IP address that's on this spam house drop list. That fires an additional alert. And then Onion AI says, this strongly suggests malware was likely executed shortly after download, C2 callback from known malicious infrastructure, two-stage attack, here's stage 1 and here's stage 2. That's pretty cool that it's able to give you that report in just a few seconds after putting all that information together. We talked about that you can just do things, but guess what? Adversaries can just do things too. So in this case, adversaries are using AI, and they're using it to go faster and to do more things and to compromise more folks. A couple examples from the recent news: foreign threat actors adopting ChatGPT, and AI becomes Russia's new cyber weapon in war on Ukraine. So adversaries are using AI and saying, we've upped our game, now up yours. So make no mistake, if we as defenders don't leverage AI, then we will fall further and further behind. Now, up until this point, the examples that I've shown have primarily been based around alerts. But guess what? You can just find sophisticated adversaries that don't generate any alerts whatsoever. All right, so in this case, I've got an attack. It generated no alerts, and I basically said, hey, Onion AI, just go and take a look at my environment. Look for anything suspicious. Look for anything out of the ordinary. And it came back with this. And so it's got this attack timeline reconstruction. Here are some things that likely happened on September the 3rd, 2025. We've got this host using curl, and we've got some PowerShell requests, both GET requests and POST requests. We've got some SSL certificate stuff, multiple connections to georgej.ru. And so the analysis is initial compromise was curl PowerShell. We had some data exfiltration via POST request, command and control via GET request, some SSL tampering, and some secondary C2 to georgej.ru. Cool stuff. I hit the wrong button. Let's go back to that and that. All right, so we talked about alerts. Onion AI can help with your alerts. We talked about sophisticated adversaries that evade your IES signature, so there are no alerts. Onion AI can help you with that. Conclusion, you can just hire a new assistant that doesn't mind long hours. Right? Onion AI can do this. It's not going to, complain about working the overtime or anything like that. So, you can just assume that this talk is over. But there just might be one more thing. You can just YOLO 24190 on a Friday afternoon. So, would you like to have a release party? So whenever we do a release party at work, and so we're going to do a release. So Jason, are you ready? All right, we're going to do a countdown. You ready? 3, 2, help me out. 1, release it. Hey, we got a thumbs up. You can just YOLO stuff on a Friday afternoon. You know, what's the worst that could possibly happen? Yeah, I just jinxed it, didn't I? All right, so version 24190. What does it have? What does it give you? New features, quality of life improvements, bug fixes galore. We are updating tons of components in the stack to include Attack Navigator, our Docker base images, ElastAlert 2, the entire Elastic Stack, Golang, Nginx, Redis, Telegraph, and SOC dependencies, and of course, Zeek. Now for our pro customers, we have improvements to our recent hypervisor feature. Good job, Josh P., by the way. Oh, and by the way, one more extra thing. If you have a pro subscription, just update to 24190 and you have Onion AI automatically. It's a part of 24190. It's available today. You don't have to wait. You can YOLO it on a Friday afternoon. All right, so let's do a very quick demo video of that. So if I go back to here, stop that. Do that. All right. Are you ready? I don't know if you're ready. All right, so we're in Security Onion Console, version 24190. We just YOLO'd it on a Friday afternoon. We're in alerts. We're looking at our alerts. So we've got this new Onion AI icon. So we want to see what Onion AI says about ET user agent, suspicious user agent, possible Trojan downloader, etc. That's a mouthful. So we play the video. And the second that we click that icon, it pivots over to Onion AI. It says, investigate alert ID, yada, yada, yada. Onion AI says, okay, I'll investigate this alert for you. Let me first fetch the alert details. It does the query comes back. Then it says, now let me retrieve the playbook questions to guide a thorough investigation of this alert. Remember I said we started with AI summaries, we moved to AI playbooks. Those playbooks are then guardrails for our AI to make sure it doesn't go off the rails. All right? So we get the playbook. Now let me gather additional context about the SMTP connections and any potential malware downloads from this host. Tool is executing. Let me check for any file transfers or downloads associated with this activity. Query events. Now let me check for any alerts related to the executable files that were downloaded. This is just going way too fast. I can't even keep up. So Onion AI is doing all of these queries in succession. It's pulling all this information, it's synthesizing, it's correlating, and immediately it gives me a blue screen of death. So we have investigation findings. We have a suspicious user agent analysis. This alert triggered on HTTP request containing the user agent string of this, and it's suspicious because it mimics an outdated Internet Explorer 6 browser, which has been obsolete since 2006. Contains the anomalous suffix, characteristics of Trojans, consistent across multiple connections to the same external IP. All right, we'll let it continue here. We got a critical finding. It delivered a Windows EXE. We've got repeated beaconing, some C2-like behavior, additional related alerts, more executables, files from US-based infrastructure, 7 distinct executables within a 10-minute window. That is our timeline, which is going to render in just a minute. We have a MITRE attack mapping. The AI assessment is that it's malicious with a confidence of 98%. We have a confirmed Trojan user agent pattern, executable masquerading, multiple executable downloads, repeated beaconing behavior, no legitimate baseline, multiple alert correlation, and geographically diverse infrastructure. And if we continue here, we have a disclaimer that we talked about before. No AI is perfect, regardless of what other vendors say. So we always include this disclaimer here. Make sure that you're verifying it with a human. Now, would you like me to acknowledge this alert or escalate to a case or perform additional investigation? That's something we haven't talked about yet. you can just tell it to acknowledge the alert, you can tell it to escalate to a case, or you can tell it to perform additional investigation. And in this case, we type a message. We look at the timeline first. Then we scroll down, we escalate to a new case. Onion AI does that for us, we approve it, and then we wrap that up. Then we go up here and click New Chat. So we're really kind of starting a new train of thought here. This is kind of a bonus tip. We talked earlier about, I think it was during Matt's talk maybe, about, if you want to write a new signature, a new IDS rule, there's several different ways of doing that. Here's yet another way of doing it. All right, so check this out. A new Trojan is using DNS lookups to exfiltrate data. Write me a Suricata detection that I can paste into a new detection within SOC. Look for a very high burst of DNS lookups from a single host. So Onion AI thinks about it, it writes the rule, it gives some recommendations, gives some reminders. So there's the rule. And then we say, hey, tweak that just a little bit, make it a little bit better for our environment. So it says, okay, here's the new rule, here's your reminders. We copy that, and then we go over to detections. We create a new detection for Suricata. We paste it in, we click create, we save it, and we've just created a new detection within seconds. So, Onion AI, your security analyst assistant. Thank you. So, you can just do things, but I warn you, it is a life-changing experience. So once I had a Commodore computer, I couldn't go back to life before computers. Can you imagine life before computers? I can't. But then once I had a PC, I couldn't go back to my old Commodore computer. Once I had Linux, I couldn't go back to Windows. Once I had network security monitoring, I couldn't go back to just IDS. Once I had enterprise security monitoring with all my endpoint logs and all my third-party integrations, I couldn't go back to just NSM. And once I had Onion AI, I couldn't go back to just manual analysis. So, 3 more things to say, and then we're done. When your boss asks you, how did you catch those nation-state adversaries? You can look them in the eye and say it with me, you can just do things. When your coworkers ask you, how did you get promoted so fast? You can look them in the eye and say it with me, you can just do things. Finally, when you retire and your friends and family ask you, how did you accomplish so much in your career? You can say, you can just do things. Thank you all very much. You've been a wonderful crowd. We appreciate you being here. We hope to see you again at B-Sides Augusta tomorrow, and we hope to see you again next year. Thank you all so much.